Why don't you go ahead and give yourself a quick introduction of yourself and as well as Commvault for those who don't know who Commvault is and what you're doing in the market.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks, Dave,
Thank
for having me, and thanks to Deloitte. This is a great space here at the show. So my name's Tim Zonca. I'm the Vice President of Portfolio Marketing at Commvault. And so I spend a lot of time with our partners, with our customers and prospects, helping them as they progress on their cyber resilience journey. A little bit about Commvault. I think in short, what Commvault really focuses on is helping our customers fight through attacks, and in particular, remain resilient through that. And that means making sure that they're still operating the technology that they rely on. If there is any sort of downtime, especially after a dramatic cyber incident of some sort, that they could recover not only fast, but cleanly and completely, so that they could get back up and running and serve the people who matter most to them. Their patients, their citizens if they're a government institution, their customers, their students if they're educators, whatever it is that drives them.
Appreciate it. And by ways of introduction myself, Dave Nowak, I am the Commvault Lead Alliance Partner. I'm very excited, very proud for this relationship. It's a new relationship for us, and we definitely think there's going to be a lot of opportunities here for us collectively in the going near future and in the market. So appreciate that. And what I like about the concepts that you've created within Commvault around the minimal viability company. Again, we just run through a couple of our questions here. So why do you feel minimum viability is important in today's increasingly data and tech-dependent industries?
Well, I think what I hear from customers is like they have whatever their aspirations are for their resilience strategy. They could be daunting at times. We jointly work with some of the largest organizations on the face of the planet. And so as they strive toward their longer term vision, which is to continuously operate their business and serve their constituents, a lot of times they're like, well, what do I want to do? What do I need to do next? And this idea of minimum viability focuses on what is most critical if there were to be a cyber attack of some sort and there is an outage. What is most critical out of all of the things that you need to get back up and running so that you could effectively deliver on your mission? And focusing on that. And that means understanding what those critical assets are, knowing is there alignment at the business level that yes, indeed, those are the right things to focus on. And then making sure that you have the right workflow in place to get it all back up and running. And that I think ultimately you're prepared to restore those things, if there were something to go wrong. And so this idea of minimum viability, at least for the customers that we're working with, it helps us have a really precise and prioritized roadmap for what do they do next in their broader resilience vision and strategy.
I love it. And I do agree with that. Today's day and age is what can you do to get your core business processes stood up as quickly as possible while you're still recovering the next tier of critical applications and having that strategy and framework in place.
Yeah, so we have some research. We haven't published this yet, but it's coming out in a couple weeks around this idea. And so we surveyed 1,000 different organizations around the globe, and it touches on something that you just mentioned, which is there's this temptation to we want to get all of it back. And we found that the organizations that practice something like this minimum viable idea, or sometimes there's different phrases for ultimately the same thing, they actually end up getting back faster and at a lower cost. And I think because of that focus versus being overwhelmed with too much and not really having the right prioritization for what to tackle first, second, third.
Agree with that. How are your customers applying the minimum viable company framework to maintain their resilience during the disruption or crisis? I think we touched upon that, but maybe go a little deeper on that.
Yeah, I think so. At the risk of this sounding like punting, it kind of depends on the customer. So I'll tease out a few things that I see common, regardless how different they are. And one of the things that most of the customers that I work with seem to agree on is kind of the workflow, like what has to happen in order to restore minimum viability. And I think one is you need access. So get your Active Directory, whatever, get identity up and running. You need to be able to securely communicate and collaborate. In these attacks, a lot of times, not only is Active Directory hit, but can you trust that your communications for getting things back are secure? So those are a couple of things. Of course, rebuilding infrastructure and the applications that will then help the your customers or your partners, whoever interact, and then the data that they need to actually do the things that to do their job, serve their constituents. For the most part, everyone agree. They may split the order of priority around, or even what they start first or second, but they're doing those 4 things. I think the thing where we then see a bit more variance is there's a set of best practices, and this is where things shift a little bit, especially insofar as who's more progressive, who's less progressive. And these are things like, are you, out of all the stuff that's critical, are you air gapping that? Is it in a cloud that's not yours? And is it immutable? Is it indelible? So you know that you have, you know where your critical data is. So that's a practice. And frankly, it's something it's been a relatively, not long, but like at least for the last few years, like that is a common best practice. I'm still surprised how many prospects I talk to that aren't doing that yet. Sure. So that's one where I see some viability. Then the more progressive organizations, after they're doing that, another set of best practices is around, do you have processes and technologies in place to help you identify your clean points to recover to? Because the one thing that's different about a cyber attack is, people have gotten great at disaster recovery when you trust the data. It's a natural disaster or an operational outage. If you trust the data, like, that's a solved problem. People are awesome at that. When you can't trust the data and you need to understand, hey, if I actually just go fail over to that other environment, that might be exactly what the bad guys want you to do. So this notion of identifying your clean points of recovery, that is, I don't think I've talked to a customer prospect this year that feels great about what they're doing there. That I think is one of the next horizons. And so that's a best practice that I think is still early days for a lot of organizations, or to the degree that they're doing it, they want to get better. Another one is just testing. Are they testing their recovery? That's a pretty mixed bag too. We see a lot of variability there. Most people aren't testing from a backup, at least with any frequency, and you got to do that because that's exactly what you'd have to do after a cyber incident. And then another one is just around automating the environments in the provisioning and the recovery for forensics teams. It might be the SecOps team doing forensics. It might be an insurance provider that needs to, see exactly what happened. But in any case, I think we see a lot of variability across those best practices. And so for as consistent as the workflow, what they want to do to restore is, that's where it's a pretty mixed bag.
Sure. I like that. How would you recommend companies integrate agentic AI, big topic these days, into their minimal viable planning, viable company planning, and what potential vulnerabilities should they consider?
So I think as it relates to agentic AI, so we have, one of our first agents started as like a Gen AI agent, and it's kind of as agentic is then becoming more popular. As we think about the agents that we're building and we think are important to kind of focus on for agentic AI, I think there's like 3 categories that we believe are important from a minimum viability and a cyber resilience perspective. The first actually has very little to do with recovery, which is there are things that operationally organizations can do that are proactive and would help them recover faster, but have really little to do with the actual recovery. Like, for example, if a set of system patches is out of date or not the right one, or there were other policies that hadn't been applied to a fleet or part of an estate, or if there's been drift in a set of systems, these are all things that are going to cause issues upon recovery. There are also things that smart agents can be like, hang on a second, something, you're running out of either policy here, or this is going to cause problems.
Right.
And proactively find those sorts of things. So I think that's a category where, we believe a lot of kind of potential and focus should be applied. Another one I think is around then just kind of the mechanics of recovery, especially around some of this idea of like clean point validation is, what are you doing to scan for threats and anomalies and correlate across systems? So I think there's some power in agentic AI there. And then probably the last is just there's a lot of processes in the recovery space that are still manual. And so being able to use smart agents to just go and, just code my run, like figure out what my run book should be, code those things for me and help me automate some of those processes. So I think there's a ton of potential here, but those are a few areas of focus that we believe are kind of important to look at first.
And just to kind of double click on that, something we have in common on the use of Gen AI or agentic AI is that scanning for the vulnerability. So you're using your technology to look at that immutable, data vault, cyber vault, and continually to make sure that it is immutable, and without those same vulnerabilities that you're hoping it is truly immutable, so you're not bringing that into your environment for recovery.
Yeah, and I think it's been interesting to see how the Gen AI stuff hits so hard and fast, and already everyone's like, it just better be baked in, like you know what I mean? And I think that's one of the areas that where it's powerful to see how AI can be applied. We have some technology that we use that looks for, not only uses AI to look for malicious behavior or anomalous behavior as well, but it'll also look for AI generated attacks. So like shape-shifting attacks where the signature changes over time or what have you. And so that's all stuff that's just like invisible to the user. Like you don't need to interact with it. You just, as a user, you just get the benefits of that sort of technology under the covers.
It's fantastic. How have you seen organizations reduce the financial impact of cyber disruptions by applying the minimal viable framework?
Actually, this was the part that I thought was coolest to see in this. Again, this research will be available soon, so especially if you're watching this, after the show, but or online rather, is that the data that we've collected so far says that I think the key thing is out of all of the things that you could put in the list of items that you want to have recovered, if you really focused on what is most critical to your business and have the discipline to do that. And in particular, I think the discipline is around the business has decided that they're critical, not, kind of a bottoms up sort of asset scanning and like, here's all our stuff, but these are the critical systems. And then understanding what it takes to get them back online and preparing for that and doing the frequent testing to do so. By doing that, what at least the research shows is it is more cost effective, not only cost effective, but actually faster to get the stuff outside of that up online as well after the fact.
Yeah, and I'm going to go into that a little bit after this next question because it ties to both the minimal viable strategy and testing side. But just to kind of go in here and I'll follow up on there. Can you elaborate the importance of real-time and continuous testing in validating recovery capabilities and building organizational readiness?
Yeah, I would say the notion of just continuous testing has been one of the most, I think, profound things that we've worked with our customers over the last year. And one of the things that I think is still, for as obvious as it is, I think it's something that organizations broadly haven't really internalized, which is something I mentioned before. Cyber recovery is not the same as like an operational recovery. When you can't trust the data, a lot of the mechanics sound the same when you're doing recovery, but what you need to do and verify insofar as like cleanliness, it's dramatically different. And the fact that you're recovering from a backup, or if you're doing some smart automation, images that have already been pre-validated, very few organizations are doing that to a degree that they're like proud of. At least that's where we've spent the bulk of our energy, is helping customers progress on that part of their journey over the last year. And so it's this move from, not only frequent testing, in many cases it was zero. As an example, I talked to a customer about a year ago, and so it's been interesting to kind of follow them along as they progressed here. When we first engaged with them, I was like, hey, so what are you doing for testing? They're a global media company. Like, well, we have 37 data centers around the world. Every year we take one application from one of those data centers and we test if we could recover that. And so that, in some cases, that was even more than what other organizations I talked to, like, well, we do like tabletop exercises, or we have some checklists. And the reason for that is, not only is it hard, it's super complex and expensive to do it with traditional mechanisms. So a lot of organizations, they're like, hey, well, we'll spin up like an isolated recovery environment of some sort. And my experience is only like some of the biggest, baddest companies on the planet can afford to do that.
Yep.
Because it's a lot of hardware, it's dedicated environment, and you have to make sure that only trusted people are getting in or out, so that you know that it's compromise free. And then all the permutations of all the things that you want to test. I think one of the things that's powerful that the cloud brings is the ability to say like, hey, I don't want to pay for this environment when I'm not using it, but I want to be able to burst to it and then go lay down these environments and test these recoveries. Now, I have a bias. We have some unique stuff that we do that allows you to do that no matter what your technology is that you're trying to recover. And so, but that's unlocked for our customers the ability to do, go from, paltry sometimes testing once a year to, doing it once a quarter. I got an email just a week and a half ago from a customer who's like, hey, we run recovery tests from backup every day, and it's the first thing that I check in the morning, and I love that I haven't gotten any notifications overnight to know like we're ready to go. And so it's really cool to see some of the progress that we've seen customers make in this kind of a white whale that they had been chasing, and they're like, hey, we could do this. There's technology now that not only unlocks it, but I think also unlocks it for kind of like mid-market or like local hospitals and organizations like that.
Well, and I had the privilege of seeing your RSA cyberspace on your resiliency range. So again, a little bit of a selfish plug for yourselves on the ability to have an environment to test for vulnerabilities as well as experience what a recovery would look like. So that continuing that testing, like Becky said, the technology and the cloud platforms that are available today. I think the resiliency range is a great experience, or a great example of that. I'm not sure if you want to hum a few bars on your resiliency range.
It's been exciting. So we launched this week a recovery range, and we've actually taken there's a partner another partner joint partner that Deloitte has called SimSpace, and you guys do some cool stuff with them on the kind of left of Bang. So there's this idea out there of cyber ranges. And there are places where you can, a lot of organizations, I think this is where, you guys have some specialty, is you do some like red teaming, blue teaming, capture the flag. You go in and really put security teams through the paces of it's on. And, people are going to attack, and you have to see what you could do to defend it, against it. And in most cases, those exercises stop at some point, like after the attack or the isolation of the attack or what have you. So we've kind of taken the spirit of that, and we said, well, what if we then go from, start at that bang and now go through the full recovery? Right. And so that's what we've introduced just yesterday. Actually, was kind of our debut of it. So we use the same technology that powers what you guys do on the kind of left of bang side, and on the right of bang, we expose a lot of the Commvault customers that are great at recovery. Actually, even if they've recovered through an attack, they haven't actually seen a lot of the mechanics of an attack. So what's been cool is we actually put them through a real live, attack. They get to see it unfold. They get to work with security counterparts to say like, hey, when we are doing forensics or we're doing threat hunting, like this is what we're doing. And then on the flip side, the security experts get to see like, oh, so this is what you're trying to figure out if it's clean or not. Like, well, we could help you with that. And so it's been cool to see these tables of these groups go through this exercise. And in some cases we built in on purpose, like just a no-win situation, like where you are going to recover a compromised set of data because you got to feel the impact of not getting it right. And so out of all the choices they have, it's kind of you're picking what do you think's the least bad one. And so to be able to do that with real stuff and a real attack, but in a safe environment where you're not going to goof anything up because you're going to make some bad choices, we believe that it's much better to do that in our environment that we provide to you. And so you cut your teeth and you skin your knees there, and then take what you learn back to your organization and go figure out how to put your organization through the paces to improve your posture.
What strategies do you recommend for integrating people, process, and technology to achieve effective recovery with the minimal viability?
From like a people, process, and technology integration perspective, I think there's two things, but as I talk, it might actually just be the same thing, which is, I think readiness is the biggest thing, is that there's close to zero. Now I've encountered like a couple, even just this calendar year, but for the most part, zero customers I talk to, like they all want to figure it out. And like there's like to the degree that there's separation between, let's say, the IT recovery practices and some of the security related practices for like threat hunting and helping verify clean points of recovery and such, even if there's distance between them, like everyone wants to figure it out together. Most of the work is actually the roles, responsibilities, processes for that.
Yeah.
So to me, I think that's like the biggest area of opportunity for integration is like the technology is pretty straightforward. It's the clarity around, you know, who's doing what, are we aligned around those roles, and do we kind of know who's responsible for fulfilling them now, and kind of what's the tiering order of, you know, who's first, second, third, in light of an incident. I think that's the biggest kind of people process integration thing, regardless if that's for a minimally viable recovery or just like, you know, any sort of recovery scenario. I think that's where we see most of, or we recommend our customers spend most of their time, because I think it's the gnarliest. It's an organizational thing.
As well as the readiness during the event itself. It's stressful.
Yeah.
You're under the pressure. You're under the gun, and you have to recover in a strategic way, in a smartly way, of your minimal viable business processes.
Yeah, I mean, you want to, you know, you practice and kind of sweat and bleed like when you're not under the duress of an attack, because and if you do that when you're not under that strain and just panic, you've practiced already, and so you have a better sense of kind of like when you need to pivot or have, you know, call your audibles, you're conversant.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you explain how infrastructure tiering and application mapping can be used to prioritize recovery efforts and facilitate continuous business operations?
I think this has been to me, like one of the more interesting parts of the organizational dynamics that I've worked with our customers. So the notion of, like, if you think of minimum viability and defining what's critical to you, on the one hand, like that's like a decades old practice. Like people have been in IT have been like defining what's important to them for like decades at this point in time. But I had a customer say it really clearly. Actually, this one of our joint customers said this really clearly to me. Their CIO was like, hey, this flips this kind of the bottoms up asset discovery, you know, system mapping approach and turns it into like business urgency, saying, does the business align around what's critical? Does the business align around these things that have been defined as key applications? Are they? And to me, one of the most interesting ones that I love just kind of like sparking a room of debate, especially if you can get multiple organizations, is like, how critical is payroll? And I've had some be like, we can go a while, and others be like, we would be out of it, you know, and because even if we pay on time, we pay taxes on, and I don't understand the mechanics of this, but like they have to have certain processes done, or like there's fees associated with it.
Sure.
And so I think from a minimum viability perspective, I think one of the most interesting things is it brings kind of more of a tops down business leader discussion or mapping to the things that IT has actually been good at for a while now. And so I think it drives this urgency and almost like utility of like, hey, we've been doing this for a while. Like now we understand the urgency and the importance of this, because when you're down, you need to know that we've already defined what's most critical, and we've already have a plan for getting it up and running. We've already been testing that plan. We've been doing it frequently. And so when it's go time, you know, it's, so I think that's been a cool part of this, the discussion around minimum viability is just that the business engagement and the urgency that they have around their role in it versus a bottoms-up IT practice.
And I agree with that. And again, I like the concept because it does simplify the concept for, and when you have different perspectives, you know, what the CEO is looking for minimal viable or most important to the business is going to be different from the CIO, or even the CFO, back to your payables conversation. You know, everybody's got a different perspective of what is important, and you got to work through that process to understand truly what is minimal viable for that particular company.
I was talking to a CISO at one of our customers. He's like, oh yeah, you ask our head of sales, of course, you know, Salesforce or our CRM is going to be like minimal. He's like, but it's not, like no one else agrees, you know, with that. And so like that's the debate that has to occur, right? So that an organization can feel confident in what they've said is really key to the business is indeed.
Yeah, I love it. What key offerings from Commvault, and I like this, but as well as with Deloitte support organization establishing and maintaining their minimal viability? So I'll let you go, and then I'm going to pile on.
Could you say that again?
The key offerings from both parties, Commvault and Deloitte, to help identify what minimal viability is for an organization.
Yeah, so I think parts that like where I'm excited, the work that we do with Deloitte is Commvault, I think we have a really powerful stack of technology that unlocks a lot of what I've talked to today. We have, regardless if it's in the cloud, if it's on-prem, if you're not sure if you want to move it from one place, like we're confident we know how to help you find it, understand if it's protected adequately or not. If not, get it protected adequately or not. If it's part of your minimally viable set of stuff, help you put it through its paces, recover it from one place to another. Like, we're great at that. Yeah. What we're not great at, and this is by design, we're not great at the now let us help you actually not just deliver it, but help you use this in an ongoing fashion where you're progressively getting better, where your organization's great saying hey, look, we've actually done analysis here. You've poorly categorized this stuff, and let's refresh this. Let's test this on an ongoing basis. This is the swath of your fleet that should have these practices applied on this quarterly or monthly cadence. Let's do these kind of more prescriptive testing scenarios, like with a recovery range or something. You guys are great at that. Yeah. And our business isn't built around that. And so what I think is exciting about the partnership is having that expertise brought to bear. And I think helping our customers then get the most out of the technology that it's easy to be excited about, but kind of who cares if it's not actually being used in a best practice driven way like you guys are great at.
Yeah. And I do like that because, again, our mutual clients is we love to ask the questions of, great, you have the technology, you've implemented the technology, they think they're safe, they that false sense of security, knowing that Commvault's there, but is it ready to go in that moment? So with a Deloitte looking at it, both from either a cyber resiliency program, a business resiliency program, or even internal audit, some of the capabilities that we have from a Deloitte perspective is to help making sure that business has the technology, the Commvault technology in place, operational and on the ready, and immutable when it matters the most. Yeah. And making sure it's ready to go.
Yeah. Yeah. We have this is not a joint customer, but I think it highlights why they should be. A customer of ours, this is a while ago, they were in a cyber recovery scenario, and they actually hadn't listened to our best practices. And so we realized this is and I told you so, but what do we do? And we're look, we know you don't have this stuff from us. We will give it to you. Just go do the right thing. And they actually couldn't as quickly as they wanted to because they didn't have the process, especially on the security side down. That's something you guys are great at, and that's something we haven't built our business around, and that's the sort of thing that I think is powerful about kind of the joint work that we're now doing together.
Love it. I love it. I'm very proud of it too. How do Commvault and Deloitte? How do Commvault and Deloitte differentiate themselves from traditional data backup solutions and services? So where do you think this market is now?
So this is what I think a super exciting part of the market. So one of the things that we do that no other provider in our space does is we believe that the best cyber resilience goes beyond just recovering your data. Mm-hmm. And that it should help, automate the restoration of, all the things that then make that data safely and scalably consumable. Are your applications that transact the data up and running, the infrastructure that needs to run, is that also working? Is the state matched, after a recovery? So there's some technology that we have that does just that for, especially in the cloud. It will go out and it will scan all your cloud resources across multiple clouds. Sure. It will let you know if they're recoverable or not. And if so, you can go ahead and make them recoverable. And then when it maps everything out. And so it has these things called assemblies. So we know, hey, this application uses, there's your network setting, these are security groups. This is, it's using this set of, serverless functions or what have you. Here's your VPC. Oh, and then your data is just one piece of it. It will actually capture all of that and will make all of that recoverable. So not only, including state. So not only are you just recovering your data, but all the cloud infrastructure, the application stacks, and in state, so that it's really rapidly actually accessible and useful. I believe that's one of the big next waves of cyber resilience is going beyond just the traditional recovery. And it's easier to do that in a cloud context because there are things you could do in the cloud that you just can't do in like an on-prem kind of traditionally packaged world. So we've started there. So we're the only ones that do that in the cloud context, but we're already starting to do it in a kind of a traditionally packaged world. There's another example, some more unique capabilities we have. It's called clean and recovery, and it'll allow you to burst to the cloud, to this isolated environment, recover your data, so you could either do testing or forensics in an isolated location. And a lot of our customers will use that even for stuff that's on-prem, but we have a way of allowing them to kind of burst to the cloud and actually recover there. We built in something called factory reset, which is like, look, why would you, if let's say that data needs, an OS, database or what have you, don't restore that from a backup. Those things might be compromised too. Why don't you just factory reset to a predefined point in time that you've already picked, it's already patched, you've already pre-verified it. It'll be way faster to do that, and your confidence will be a lot higher. So it's similar in spirit to this idea of recovering more than data like that we have in the cloud, but even helps accelerate some of that in an on-prem world too. And so anyway, sorry to ramble there because I'm excited about that. Like I think that kind of beyond just data recovery is like one of the big next waves of cyber resilience.
Well, and I know you're excited, but I just talking to my colleagues, both from the cyber side as well as infrastructure, the ability to use your technology, the automation, the workflow to be able to recover from AD instance from scratch, which is one of your crown jewels and critical for the recovery side. To do that within I would say minutes, but it's hours, but what manually would take days to do for validation. You were able to do that automated in minutes and hours versus days.
And that's another example where we're like, that's not data. I mean, that's like, kind of key application recovery as Active Directory. And so it's another one that kind of mirrors that vision that we have that it can't just be your data, anymore. Like there are opportunities to use new technology to do things that were either hard or impossible, even 5 years ago. And it's another good example, yeah.
It's really, really cool technology that you guys have bringing to the market. How can organizations integrate integrity as well as availability into their data backup solutions in the face of evolving threat actors in tactics?
I think I think this goes back to this core premise of minimum viability, which is I think from an availability perspective is being clearly defining like these are the critical systems that the business has said has to be up and running, and prioritizing those as the things that need key availability. And I think as part of that, like what you can't rely on in a cyber recovery is that the data is trusted and clean. And so you can't adhere to the old practices of like high availability and like, oh, we'll just fail over from this environment to the other because, and so I think that's where the value of having a clear definition of what is minimally viable and that has to be available the soonest, and that gets expedited through the cleanliness process. Like it's, we already know where it lives. It should be living in our air gap, but and now let's go ensure that it's clean and get that back up and running is I think a key piece of that availability of that critical data and infrastructure.
Last one I have here is how do you see the role of resilience evolving in response to growing sophistication of ransomware attacks, including AI-driven threats? You mentioned that a little bit before. And what preventative measures do you recommend?
I think with one of the things that is interesting about AI-driven attacks is some of the stuff that we've recently introduced is like a technologist is really exciting to geek out on is I had mentioned like an example before where we'll look at even polymorphic attacks like AI driven or created like polymorphic attacks and use AI to kind of fight AI. I love geeking out on that sort of stuff. However, I think some of the most dangerous things as it relates to AI-driven attacks now are like helping people write better emails. And so it's like it kind of amazes me that there's this like tension between what's super cool to do and talk about and even implement our technology, and then the reality that there's it's just like better email writing is actually like way more prolifically dangerous than these like really sophisticated attacks. So like I think that I don't know if I want to say like that tension or that continuum, I think is the thing that that I think we look at it is focusing on, from regardless if it's something like phishing and like you had mentioned, then being able to make sure we can store Active Directory in a safe, clean, scalable way, all the way through like really sophisticated threat detection and anomaly detection and threat hunting. We kind of keep an eye across that. I think somewhere in the middle then is you can have people that are technical, but they might not be coders. Like that's like this middle land that's also super dangerous, where they, using AI to help them create attacks. So I think we kind of look across the spectrum of those and make sure that as we continue to evolve our AI-driven capabilities, but it's kind of embedded in the fabric so much that a lot of it's across. Are we looking for AI-driven attacks, like from understanding the risk that's out there, helping people improve their readiness, and then the actual mechanics of recovery? So we kind of think about it across those facets, regardless if it's as simple but as effective as well-written emails, all the way to super sophisticated AI generated or driven attacks.
Yeah, and then just to kind of double down or double click on that is, again, traditional security practices, defense in depth, is sound security operations and monitoring, tying in recovery with incident response, and then what we've been talking about this whole time is practicing, drilling, exercising it, not just doing it the once a quarter tabletop exercises, but leveraging the capabilities that we have today, both AI platforms, cloud platforms, your cloud cyber resiliency platform. Those capabilities were not available 5-ish years ago. So taking that AI side on the security program, the resilience program side, as well as defending against AI attacks as well.
Well, I think another thing where we actually spend a lot of time, for as much as like I think we're doing cool stuff with like agentic. We've already done and continue to evolve like cool stuff we've done on the like Gen AI front. One of the things that we're great at doing is as people have more and more AI specific workloads, we built a massive set of protection around that. And so it may be to the tune of like billions of objects in like an S3 data store. It might be vector support for like Postgres, like vector DBs or what have you, where like it's not just good old data that you need to kind of be able to back up like that looks different. Like AI specific data looks different, and so the being able to support protecting that too is kind of an emerging workload. That's another big area, like pretty exciting area of focus for us as well. And we already have, I think the industry's kind of like broadest set of support for those sets of workloads.
Excellent. All right, I think we're at time. So Tim, I want to thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate it.
This is great to be here.
Great conversation, and looking forward to us teaming in the future.
I am too. Yeah.
And helping our clients recover and be more resilient. So
yeah, and thanks everybody.
Thanks everybody. Appreciate it.